Thought Patterns and Emotional Attachments Part 2. Hello everyone, today is the second part of the lecture on thoughts and hooks. We will be looking at aspects such as guilt, domestic triggers, and other people's influences. Examples of hooks. In the last lesson we discussed how we get hurt. Today we will look at the situation from a different perspective. Let's say you are in the role of the abuser and Basia is the victim. This is a completely new approach where the elder Rauve manipulates your consciousness and creates a new hook. Feelings of guilt. Guilt is one of the most common types of bondage. Manipulating the mind with guilt creates the programs that cause us to act in certain ways. This hook can be deeply connected to your personal boundaries and energy field. Household triggers are another important aspect. Triggers often use our daily habits and rituals to set the stage for interactions. For example, frustration or anger over small things can set off a chain of negative reactions. This lesson concludes our overview of mental hooks and their role in dating. In the next part, we will answer questions on this topic. My course notes so far. Let's take a look. This session dives deeper into concepts like guilt, domestic triggers, and the influence of others. In our previous lecture, we explored scenarios where someone else imposed insults on us, situations where we felt like victims. But today, we will turn the tables. Imagine a scenario where you are the perpetrator, not the victim. By examining this shift in perspective, we'll uncover how external forces create hooks and manipulate us, often without our awareness. Guilt imposed out of nothing. Let's talk about guilt, specifically those feelings that seem to appear out of nowhere. Imagine your grandmother who worries for days because she said something she believes offended you, but you don't even remember the comment. Or picture this, you're on a bus, distracted, and don't notice an older person standing nearby. Later, you realize you might not have given up your seat. For days, this guilt gnaws at you even though it wasn't intentional. These examples illustrate guilt that has no real foundation. It's a classic form of manipulation. Forces outside ourselves, which we might call larvae, create these hooks to drain our energy or shift our behavior. It's important to recognize these moments for what they are, constructed and artificial. Manipulation through guilt. There are two main ways guilt is used to manipulate us. The first is guilt created out of thin air, like the grandmother example. The second is more insidious. It's when guilt convinces us that harmful actions are acceptable. For example, you mistreat someone and justify it as the right thing to do, even though deep down you know it's wrong. Guilt becomes a powerful tool in manipulation because it divides us emotionally. It keeps us controlled and stuck in cycles of negativity. Manipulators rely on this because guilt, especially over small things, can be one of the biggest drains on our energy. Personal triggers and domestic hooks. Now let's focus on those small daily irritations, what I call domestic triggers. These are things like an unwashed cup left on the table, a misplaced item, or even something as simple as finding a hair in your food. Triggers like these often repeat themselves, becoming patterns that manipulators use to provoke consistent reactions from us. The larvae don't care what the trigger is, whether it's a dirty dish or a noisy neighbor. They only care about the energy they can drain from our responses. These hooks will persist in your life until you stop feeding into them. Breaking free from hooks. The first step in breaking free is awareness. You have to recognize that the trigger, whether it's a hair on a plate or an unwashed cup, isn't the real issue. The issue lies in the external force creating it. Once you become aware of this, the next step is to stop reacting. If you deny the manipulator your emotional energy, the situation becomes unprofitable for them and they will move on. The final step is resistance. Declare your will firmly. Refuse to allow these manipulations to affect you, and over time the hooks will lose their grip, observing and documenting triggers. Here's a practical exercise for you. Carry a notebook or use your phone to record moments when you feel triggered. Throughout the day, notice what irritates you. Was it an unwashed dish? A careless comment? Write it all down. This process is about recognizing patterns and understanding where manipulation occurs in your daily life. Once you have a clear picture, You can start addressing these triggers one by one, handling external influences. It's not just our own triggers we have to deal with. Often, other people become the source of our frustration. Maybe your partner gets upset about a spoon left on the counter or a glass left on the table. Their irritation transfers to you, escalating the situation. Recognize this for what it is, an attempt by external forces to create conflict and drain energy from both of you. Setting personal boundaries is essential. Don't absorb the negativity or let it push you into unnecessary arguments. Developing resistance. When these manipulations arise, you must respond decisively. Say, I do not accept this in my space, and mean it. If you find yourself struggling with repetitive thoughts or feelings, a simple technique like snapping a rubber band on your wrist can help. This small momentary sensation breaks the cycle of inner dialogue and reminds you to refocus your energy. Over time, as you practice resistance, these manipulations will lose their power over you. The role of willpower. It's crucial to understand that your willpower is the key to breaking free. Manipulators rely on your compliance, but your will is inviolable. When you declare your intent, whether it's to reject, guilt, or stop reacting to triggers, you assert your freedom. The manipulators might push back harder at first, but if you remain consistent, they will eventually retreat. Remember, this is a battle of wills, and your determination must be stronger. Homework and next step. As we conclude today, I encourage you to take time to analyze your triggers and hooks. Observe yourself carefully over the next few days. Note where you feel guilt or irritation. Write down the thoughts that arise, no matter how small they seem. This self-awareness is the first step toward breaking free. Finally, understand that this process requires commitment. If you delay or ignore it, the manipulation will continue. Taking responsibility for your freedom is the first step toward real change. In our next session, we'll dive into social and family programming, exploring how these systems shape us and how we can break free. Manipulation through domestic patterns. Let's talk about repetitive patterns. You've probably noticed certain situations repeating themselves in your life. Perhaps there's always an unwashed cup on the table or a neighbor's loud music constantly disrupting your peace. These patterns aren't random, they're deliberate. Manipulative forces, like the larvae we discussed earlier, exploit these situations because they know you'll react. They don't care about the nature of the trigger. What matters is the emotional energy you expend when you respond. The key to breaking this cycle is recognizing the pattern and refusing to engage. The economics of manipulation. Here's how manipulation works. Suppose the manipulator spends 12 units of energy to create a trigger, say that unwashed cup or the hair in your food. In response, you expend 500 units of emotional energy, whether through irritation, anger, or guilt. This imbalance makes the situation highly profitable for the manipulator. But when you stop reacting, they get nothing in return. Over time, they'll stop creating that specific trigger because it's no longer worth their effort. Breaking the cycle. The solution is simple but not easy. Stop reacting. The moment you see the unwashed cup or hear the loud neighbor, remind yourself that your reaction feeds the manipulator. Take a deep breath and let it go. Initially, this may feel unnatural because these triggers are deeply ingrained, but with practice, you'll notice that the situation starts to lose its power over you. Eventually, the manipulator will abandon that trigger and move on. Inner dialogue and resistance. Let's address those persistent thoughts. The inner dialogue that keeps replaying in your mind. These thoughts are another form of manipulation, designed to keep you stuck in negative cycles. When these arise, don't engage with them. Instead, firmly declare, I reject this thought. It has no place in my mind. If necessary, use techniques like snapping a rubber band on your wrist to disrupt the thought process. Remember, this is about asserting your willpower and breaking free from the control of these manipulative forces. Why manipulation persists? Manipulators don't give up easily. When you start resisting, they often intensify their efforts, hoping to wear you down. This is why it's crucial to stay consistent in your resistance. Over time, As they expend more energy without any return, their influence will weaken. Think of it like a tug of war. The more you pull back, the less power they have. Recognizing the source of manipulation. It's important to understand that the triggers themselves aren't the real problem, whether it's this unwashed cup, the loud neighbor, or the irritating colleague. These are just tools used by the manipulator. The real issue lies in the manipulative force behind these situations. By shifting your focus from the trigger to the source, you can address the root of the problem: personal boundaries. This brings us to personal boundaries. When someone else's irritation or negativity is directed at you, it's easy to absorb that energy and let it affect your mood. But remember, you have the power to reject this. Set clear boundaries, both internally and externally. Refuse to let someone else's triggers become your problem. This is essential for maintaining your emotional and mental balance. Practical steps for resistance. Here's what you can do right now. First, create a space where you can document your thoughts and triggers: a notebook, a phone app, or even a simple piece of paper. Throughout the day, take note of moments when you feel irritation, guilt, or other strong emotions. Write down the situation and your reaction. This practice will help you identify patterns and become more aware of how manipulation operates in your life. Observing the patterns. As you review your notes, you'll start to see recurring themes. Maybe it's a specific person or situation that consistently triggers you. These patterns are your roadmap to understanding how manipulation works. Once you identify them, you can start addressing them one by one. Remember, this isn't about blaming yourself or others. It's about recognizing and dismantling the mechanisms of control. Preparing for change. Understand that breaking free from these patterns requires a shift in mindset. You can't continue living and thinking the way you did before. This is about creating a new perspective, one that isn't controlled by external triggers or manipulative forces. It's hard work, but the freedom and clarity you'll gain are worth it. The battle of wills. Manipulation is often a battle of wills. The manipulative forces, whether you call them larvae, egregores, or something else, exert their will to control you. They push you to agree with their narrative, to accept their influence. But here's the thing: your will is just as strong, if not stronger. You have the right to say, no, I reject this. This is not my reality. Every time you assert your will, you reclaim your power. It's not about shouting or force, it's about clarity and conviction. Your will is sacred, and no external force has the right to override it. Why resistance matters. When you resist manipulation, you force the manipulator to expend more energy. Initially, they may increase their efforts, amplifying their inner dialogues or creating more intense triggers. But remember, their energy isn't infinite. Over time, as they get nothing in return, their power diminishes. This is why consistency is crucial. Stay firm in your resistance and you'll see their influence weaken and eventually disappear. Disrupting the cycle. Let's talk about practical tools. One simple yet effective method is using a rubber band on your wrist. When you notice a manipulative thought or inner dialogue, snap the rubber band lightly. This moment of physical sensation interrupts the manipulator's transmission. It's a small but powerful way to disrupt the cycle. Over time, as you consistently break these patterns, the manipulator will lose its grip on you. Understanding energy exchange. Manipulators rely on energy exchange. They create a situation, you react emotionally, and they feed off that energy. But what happens when you stop reacting? They expend energy to create the trigger, but they get nothing in return. This imbalance makes the situation unprofitable for them. By refusing to engage, you cut off their energy supply, forcing them to retreat. The role of inner dialogues. Inner dialogues are one of the manipulator's most effective tools. These repetitive thoughts are designed to keep you stuck, doubting yourself, or feeling guilty. To counter this, practice mindfulness. When intrusive thought arises, recognize it for what it is: a manipulation. Firmly state, I reject this thought, me. It does not belong to me. Over time, this practice will weaken the manipulator's influence, breaking contracts. Every manipulative situation is like a contract. By reacting to a trigger, you agree to the manipulator's terms. To break free, you must consciously cancel these agreements. Write them down if it helps. I cancel all agreements that allow manipulation in my life. This act of writing and declaring your intent reinforces your will and helps you reclaim your energy. Analyzing your patterns. Take time to reflect on your life. Identify the triggers and patterns that consistently cause emotional distress. Are there situations that always seem to repeat themselves? Are there specific people or environments that drain your energy? By analyzing these patterns, you'll uncover the areas where manipulation is most effective. Awareness is the first step toward change, maintaining boundaries. As you break free from manipulation, it's essential to maintain strong personal boundaries. Manipulative forces will often try to re-enter your life through new triggers or by influencing those around you. Stay vigilant. Recognize when someone else's emotions or actions are attempting to pull you back into the cycle. Remember, your boundaries are your protection. Final thoughts on resistance. The journey to freedom requires determination and self-awareness. It's about more than just stopping specific manipulations. It's about changing how you think and live. This process takes time and effort, but the rewards are immense. You'll not only reclaim your energy, but also rediscover your true self, free from external control, reclaiming power through awareness. Every manipulative connection relies on your lack of awareness. When you're not fully present, when you react without thinking, these forces gain the upper hand. But once you recognize the manipulation, you begin to dismantle its power. Awareness is your strongest ally. With it, you see not only the surface of the situation but also the deeper systems at play. The hooks, the triggers, and the patterns designed to control you. The manipulator's energy costs. Manipulators spend energy to influence you. Whether it's through inner dialogues, guilt, or repeated triggers, they invest their own resources to maintain control. But if you stop reacting, their investment yields no return. Think of it like a business losing money. It can't sustain itself for long without profit. By refusing to engage, you force the manipulator to bear the cost of their actions, which eventually makes the effort unsustainable. The role of contracts in manipulation. Manipulative situations function like unspoken agreements. When you feel guilty, react emotionally, or engage with the narrative, you're essentially agreeing to play your part. Breaking these contracts is crucial. Start by acknowledging them. I recognize this manipulation. I do not agree to it. I cancel this contract. This statement, spoken with intent, is a powerful declaration of your sovereignty. Patterns that reinforce manipulation. Certain patterns of behavior or thought make you more susceptible to manipulation. For example, believing you're small or powerless creates fertile ground for hooks. Manipulators thrive on these vulnerabilities, planting seeds that reinforce your self-doubt. To break free, challenge these beliefs, replace them with the affirmations of your strength and autonomy. You are not small, you are powerful. How triggers are exploited. Triggers are like open doors for manipulation. They are specific situations or emotions that consistently provoke a strong reaction. Manipulators know where these doors are and use them repeatedly. But here's the key. When you stop reacting to a trigger, the door closes. The manipulator can no longer access you through that entry point. Over time, with consistent effort, you can seal all these doors. Why manipulative situations persist. Manipulation often creates repeating scenarios. The same arguments, the same guilt trips, the same frustrations, all designed to siphon your energy. These situations persist because they're effective, but when you stop reacting, they lose their power. It's like removing the fuel from a fire. It can burn without a source. By staying calm and disengaged, you dismantle the entire cycle. The importance of willpower. Willpower is your greatest weapon against manipulation. It's not about brute force, but about unwavering intent. When you declare, "This stops here," and follow through with your actions, you assert control over your reality. Remember, no manipulative force can override your will unless you allow it. Stay firm, and you'll see the chains of manipulation begin to fall away. Practical exercises for awareness. Start observing your daily reactions. Carry a notebook or use your phone to jot down moments when you feel triggered or manipulated. What happened? How did you react? Over time, patterns will emerge. You'll see which situations or people consistently provoke you. This awareness is the first step toward breaking the cycle. Once you recognize the triggers, you can start dismantling their power, recognizing manipulation in everyday moments. Everyday irritations can be subtle manipulations. For instance, an unwashed cup on the table or a misplaced spoon may seem trivial but can provoke significant frustration. These small annoyances are often designed to keep you reactive and distracted. When you catch yourself responding emotionally to such triggers, pause. Ask yourself, why am I reacting this way? Is this truly important? Recognizing the manipulation is the first step in neutralizing its power. Breaking the cycle of triggers. Triggers persist as long as you react to them. When you see that unwashed cup or hear the neighbor's loud music, and you choose not to react, the cycle begins to break. The manipulative system will no longer invest in creating these situations because they no longer yield results. Over time, the unwashed cups and loud noises will lose their grip on your emotions and fade from your life. How manipulators change their tactics. When you stop reacting to one type of manipulation, the system may try another. If the unwashed cup no longer works, perhaps a new neighbor will start drilling at odd hours, or a different frustration will appear. This shift is a sign of progress. It means you've outgrown one trap and the manipulator is scrambling for another. Recognize this as a sign that you're taking back control. Establishing personal boundaries. When someone projects their frustrations onto you, it's often their own manipulative system at work. For example, a family member might lash out over a trivial matter like a misplaced item. In these moments, it's crucial to set personal boundaries. You don't have to absorb their energy or react to their attacks. Instead, calmly acknowledge their frustration without taking it personally. This approach protects your energy and prevents the manipulative cycle from escalating. The power of ignoring manipulation. Ignoring a manipulative situation doesn't mean pretending it doesn't exist. It means recognizing the manipulation and choosing not to engage emotionally. When you shift your focus away from the immediate trigger and toward the source of the manipulation, you reclaim your power. The manipulator loses control because their influence relies on your reaction. Observing and analyzing patterns. Keep a journal of your triggers and reactions. Each time you notice yourself feeling irritated, guilty, or manipulated, write it down. Over time, you'll see patterns emerge. Perhaps certain people or situations constantly provoke you. By analyzing these patterns, you will begin to understand how the manipulative system operates in your life and take steps to dismantle it. The role of awareness in breaking free. Awareness is your strongest tool. When you stay present and observe your reactions, you gain insight into how manipulation works. This insight allows you to make conscious choices instead of reacting automatically. With practice, you will notice manipulations as they happen and respond with calm detachment, rendering them ineffective. Why triggers persist? Triggers remain active in your life because of the energy you invest in them. As long as you react, whether with frustration or guilt, you reinforce the manipulative system's hold over you. For example, if a dirty dish or a misplaced item continues to upset you, it signals to the system that the trigger is effective. Once you stop responding emotionally, the trigger loses its power and gradually disappears. Recognizing everyday hooks. Everyday hooks are small irritations that manipulate your emotions, such as someone cutting you off in traffic or leaving a mess behind. These situations are often designed to create a ripple effect, pulling you into a state of negativity. Recognize these hooks as they happen and choose to remain unaffected. By doing so, you reclaim control over your energy and mood. Understanding the manipulator's effort. Manipulative systems, like larvas or egregores, expend energy to influence you. They rely on your reactions to sustain themselves. If you resist and refuse to feed them emotionally, they must use more energy to try and affect you. Over time, this imbalance causes the manipulative forces to weaken, and eventually they will retreat because the cost outweighs the benefit. The role of consistency. Breaking free from manipulative triggers requires consistency. Initially, resistance might feel challenging as the manipulative system intensifies its efforts. Stay firm. Every time you choose not to react, you weaken the manipulator's grip. This consistency will gradually free you from its influence, identifying larger patterns. Beyond the small daily triggers, there are larger patterns in your life that contribute to manipulation. These could be unresolved childhood traumas, feelings of inadequacy, or deeply ingrained beliefs about yourself. These larger hooks often serve as fertile ground for manipulative forces. Take time to identify and address these patterns to break free from their control. The importance of self-awareness. Self-awareness is your best defense against manipulation. By observing your reactions and understanding the deeper reasons behind them, you can dismantle the manipulative forces. Awareness allows you to see the broader picture, the systems and entities working behind the scenes, and empowers you to take action. Next steps in your practice. To further your progress, continue to journal your triggers and reactions. Identify patterns and recurring themes in your life. Recognize when you are being influenced and assert your will to break the cycle. Remember, this is an ongoing process that requires vigilance and dedication. Manipulative forces and resistance. When you start resisting manipulation, the forces attempting to control you may intensify their efforts. They will try harder to impose their will, creating stronger inner dialogues, heightened emotional triggers, or amplified guilt. This is a natural reaction from the manipulative system. It seeks to hold onto its influence. You must maintain your stance, asserting your will with clarity and determination. As you stand firm, these forces expend more energy without gaining anything in return, which eventually weakens their grip. Breaking free, shifting focus. One key to breaking free is to shift your focus from the external situation to the root cause of manipulation. For example, if you're triggered by an unwashed plate, recognize that the plate itself is not the issue. Instead, focus on the system or entity attempting to manipulate you through that situation. By doing so, you address the source of the problem rather than getting caught in its superficial manifestations. The role of free will. Your willpower is inviolable. It's a universal law. No external entity, no matter how manipulative, has the right to override your will. When you assert your intentions clearly, such as declaring that you reject manipulation and choose freedom, the manipulative force must eventually retreat. However, this requires unwavering confidence in your stance. Even a small doubt can provide a foothold for the manipulative force to continue its influence. The rubber band technique. For moments when manipulative inner dialogues feel overwhelming, the rubber band technique can be a helpful tool. Wear a loose rubber band on your wrist. When you feel caught in a manipulative thought or emotional state, gently snap the band against your wrist. This small, sharp sensation interrupts the manipulative transmission and breaks its immediate hold over your consciousness. Over time, you'll find less need for this technique as your resistance strengthens and the manipulative forces weaken. Recognizing patterns of influence. Manipulative systems often exploit your existing patterns of thought and emotion. They take advantage of your vulnerabilities, whether it's guilt, anger, or insecurity, to establish a connection and drain your energy. Analyze these patterns to identify areas where you are most susceptible. By addressing these underlying issues, you reduce the manipulative system's ability to affect you, removing fertile ground for manipulation. Your internal beliefs and thought processes create fertile ground for manipulation. For example, if you carry a belief that you're unworthy or powerless, it becomes easier for manipulative forces to take hold. Work on changing these foundational beliefs. Replace them with empowering perspectives that affirm your strength and freedom. Homework and self-reflection. To solidify your progress, keep a journal of your daily reactions and emotional triggers. Observe where and how manipulation occurs in your life. Write down any recurring thoughts, situations, or emotions that seem to pull you into negativity. Reflect on these patterns and declare your will to remove them from your life. By consistently doing this, you begin to dismantle the manipulative systems influencing you. That's all for today. Thanks for watching. See you at the next lecture.